Yo dog, Kenny Boucher here, Next Level Painting, hitting you up on the literal best of all days, coming to you from the Beats Lab in Hollywood, California. We're doing it again. Today we're working with Warcaster Minis, that's that Privateer Press Kickstarter. Super excited to get my hands on some Privateer Press Minis. I haven't worked with these guys in a couple of years. So we're dusting off the old P3 paints. We're going to rediscover our love for them and we're going to keep it pure today. The Next Level Painting 101 curriculum, which we teach private classes via Patreon. We're in open enrollment right now, but supplies are limited. We have a limited amount of spots that we have available. So let's apply that 101 system, which we typically use it on 40K minis, and let's take it over to one of these Privateer Press minis. That totally different type of composition style. Showing you the end of the video at the beginning of the video because I'm a marketing genius, guys. We got that firebrand Privateer Press Warcaster Kickstarter. It's been a while. We're going to be using them P3 paints, as I said, and we're going to have an absolute blast painting this guy. Now, I am going to show you guys how to airbrush your primer on. You know, I don't even do this that often. As a matter of fact, I only have one container of primer in my studio, and it's gray. I would have preferred black, but for the sake of education, we'll do it the hard way, fine. So what I'm doing is using airbrush thinner, not flow improver. I just put the minimum amount in there to facilitate smooth airbrushing. And what I'm doing is taking a step back, opening up the cone, shining a lot of paint on this model, but keeping my control on point. Now that I've got good coverage, I'm gonna add a little bit of water to the mix, thin it down slightly, and I'm gonna do a second pass, making sure to get in all the nooks and all the crannies. Now, when you airbrush your primer on, what you're doing is you're trying to maximize your coverage and build up your opacity. And when you do it with a rattle can, it's more like it's max opacity, so don't worry as much about coverage, at least in my head. I'm not a priming scientist. So we're gonna just keep going through it, taking our time, building it up. We're trying to stay in complete control of all the paint buildup, try to preserve all the details. And now with these airbrush primers, let them dry overnight, at least. Now we're gonna use Thalmar Black. Man, it feels good to say that again. Now I'm switching my airbrushes now. That was my Eclipse. I'm letting it do its thing. I'm going to be switching over to my Mr. Hobby Krios. This has a little throttler valve on it. I can stay and control my PSIs and start building up my details. I love that. We're gonna, as usual, flow improver, water, little backflow, gangster gumbo technique. And we're gonna set it up to be a little thin here, and we're gonna do several thin coats. Now the starting point on this model is black. Would have been nice to have primed it black, but meh. You know, I'm enjoying myself, got my audiobook on, just relaxing. Thin coats, big paintbrush. Imagine if you were not using an airbrush. You would be using a huge ass paintbrush right now. So take a step back with the airbrush, make it a big paintbrush, take your time, shine that light down like a flashlight on it, build it up, just thin layers, coverage over opacity, build up your opacity over time. Now, if you've got a lot of black on there, you can still see some of that gray poking through. Thin it down, do it again, start aiming more deliberately at those areas. Take your time. Don't let it be an ocean of water. Like I said, it's not about opacity. Don't let it get built up or opaque. You're just trying to get that coverage through several coats. This first Thalmar Black base coat is incredibly important to the workup. It's going to give us a lot of our drama, a lot of our contrast on the shadow side in those darker values. Take your time, do it the right way, straight up. Now, as you move forward on this, we're gonna be using this gray, this like ashen, I don't know what it is. It's like a warm gray. Pretty fucking cool color. I like it. Not literally cool, figuratively cool. So we're gonna mix some Gravedigger denim in there. Like I got no rhyme or reason here. I haven't said Gravedigger denim on this channel in some time. One of my favorite P3s, and we're basically making this strange ass kind of smoky bluish gray. Now we're gonna cut in a bunch of details here, guys. What we're doing is a big top down zenithal position. We're just shining the flashlight down from the top, shifting most of this model over to this smoky, weird gray blue that we made. It's almost like a purple built into that weird gray. And then we added some Gravedigger denim to it, and it's interesting. Like, I just saw the two colors. My man Bob sent me some awesome stuff from P3 because my stocks were low, and I just, wanted to flex some muscles. Now what we're going to do is our normal deal. We got some dirty paint water in the pot. We're just going to start adding more value to it. Going up in the value scale, I'm looking for brighter. Now this also gives me an opportunity to be creative with my hues. So right now we're not being creative. We're just up in the value by using more Grave Digger denim. Now I'm going to stay a little tighter from the zenithal position. I'm going to aim deliberately to create some more clutch transitions, a little sexiness, pop it out, try to preserve some of our black, try to keep it looking its best as we move forward. Now you may notice that some of that gray is still poking through in some of the recesses. It's all good. I've got plans for that. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here. Just make sure you get those panels looking their best, build up those values, progressively brighter, but make sure you leave some real estate devoted to the shadows and that Thalmar black. Don't just keep repainting it several times. You just want to kind of budget your real estate. Now, this guy is going to be dark. I want him to be sort of a smoky dark gray, maybe edging on black. But since he's not like going to be like a Black Templar from 40K or something like that, I'm going to authorize myself to go a little hard on the transition. So we just threw some straight up fucking white in there. So we're going hard on the values. So we just went up in value, like I said. But now I'm going to get a little creative. Throw some of that Eldritch Blue in there. I'm going to electrify this mix. Get a little fun with it. You know, when you're going up, when you're working this thin, you're kind of glazing, right? Like you're using a lot of moisture to lower the opacity. But since there's a lot of moisture in the lines, you have to try to stay in control of that. And with the airbrush, it's so easy to do. So we're going to just thin it down, make it a glaze. And with a glaze, you can go up, down in value, left, right, and hue. You can do anything you want. So we shifted the hue and we went up in value. I thinned it down crazy. And I lowered my PSI with my inline throttler. And I'm going to get a little bit tighter, a little bit more deliberate. And we're going to devote some real estate that we've already budgeted to this poppy highlight. We're taking it to 11, guys. This is an old school technique. Take it to 11 before you wash it back down to 10. So we're just building it up, taking our time, using all the PSI that we have available to us, rocking the needle back slightly, letting the most minimum amount of paint escape through that needle. And that way we can stay in control. If you catch your paint splattering or sputtering here, thin it down more. You should be uncomfortable. That's what I tell all my students in our private classes. I want you to feel uncomfortable with how thin the paint is. Now, I'm pre-highlighting some areas that are going to be yellow, as you saw earlier. And there's a reason for that. I'm going to show you some ancient technique. I learned this shit the hard way as we build it up. Now, the cool thing is when you're working with a kind of a value, like even if it's got blues and shit in it, you know, it can help you in other parts of the paint job. So just keep working the value game, right? Working up the ladder. We're going to use the dirty paint water. We're going to make that gangster gumbo. We're going to marry it in, up the value, thin it down even more. Remember earlier when I was like, you should be uncomfortable? Well, in this pass, I want you to be even more uncomfortable. So now it's got a lot more white in the mix. We're like basically water, dirty paint water. And we're just aiming, lowering the PSI with that throttler, getting in real tight. Now, anytime you catch it not spraying, maybe clean the tip. Always keep the tip clean. Get in there a little tighter. You don't want to see any sputtering. If you do, thin it down, take your time, and just make that magic happen. And you're getting huge gains here. Even though we're literally painting with water, you see it has a huge impact on the model. Now, like I said again, we're not looking for opacity. We're looking for coverage. Put it where you want. Get the coverage you want. Build the opacity over time through multiple layers. Treat it as a sheet of glass, real thin sheet of glass. And just keep stacking those sheets of glass on top of each other. I will do this 1,000 times. Now, what I'm doing is pre-highlighting that shield. We're going to aim, kind of get that perimeter set up. It's not too hard to just control the angle of the model and shoot this color in there. And you know, spoiler alert from the beginning of the video, that the shield is going to be yellows and oranges. So a lot of times when you're working with yellows and oranges on a big surface like this, it actually helps to just kind of make it grayscale, but mostly white. So I'm even doing that here on the sword. We're just kind of spraying in the whites. This is still kind of a dirty bluish gray. It's not like pure at all. We're just working in the same values that are already in the model. It's all good. Even on these little things back here, I'm spraying. I'm getting some of the overspray on parts of the model I didn't intend to, but I'm working so thin it don't matter. It's going to be obscured. It's going to blend right in. All good. So now we're just finding those final little spots, dialing it in, adding another sheet of glass to the model, achieving more opacity over time, just having fun listening to an audiobook. You know, airbrushing can be incredibly fast, one and done. But you're doing a model like this, just take your time, build it up. You're still saving a billion seconds. We could have paintbrushed it like this in, 20 hours, some shit like that. Instead, I'm just going to spend a good 25 minutes airbrushing, make it look its absolute smoothest and most flawless. Those transitions and their flawlessness really depends on that thinness and that patience. All right, I'm going to grab my wet palette, Red Grass Games, shout out right there, my everlasting wet palette. I'm going to show you how to actually load up a wet palette here. So what I did was I completely soaked this sponge, dumped some of the water out. I want the water level to be about even with the sponge. I'm going to lay a piece of parchment paper down on top, and I don't want any fucking water to be on top of my parchment paper. I'm going to go the extra route of grabbing a paper towel, smoothing it down, getting it nice and clean, dab up some of that extra moisture. And I don't like any water on top of my wet palette. I want it to be like an air conditioner or a refrigerator for my paints. I want it to be like a humidifier, cool them down a little bit, keep them kind of moist. Right now I'm going to grab some old school colors. Got that boiler black, cold steel. God, I haven't said these names in some, oh my God, it makes me so excited. So now I'm going to pull one of each. This is like a dark silver and a bright silver. I'm going to put a little squirt of water. I like to see my water beat up like Scotchgard, and I'm going to use a little flow improver here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get some of this boiler black set up with some flow improver. It's going to be nice and humid because of my wet palette, and I'm going to put a little of that flow improver in there to help me with the lay down, and I might even make a mix of the two. So I got something kind of in between the two metals, guys. Look, metal is an effect, right? It's a color that has glitter in it. This is just dark gray and bright gray with glitter in it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to just kind of block in all this guy's shenanigans with boiler black. You got a little flow improver in there, going kind of heavy. Right now you can find that sweet spot where you can get one and done coverage. Just find the correct amount of moisture. Little flow improver never hurt. Helps slow the dry time down and get nice smooth coats. And if you have to do a second pass, go for it. But I plan on building the metal up a little bit anyway. So I don't care if this first coat is slightly transparent, though it's doing a good job of maxing out that coverage. Shout out to P3 Paints from Privateer Press. I've always loved these paints. It's been a while since I used them, and I am absolutely rediscovering some of my joy for this paint company right here. So we're going to do all this stuff, taking our time, using a nice big fat number 4. Light brush pressure is key. Always change your vector. Always be aware of where your brush sides are banging up. You don't want to be flinging any of this metal on your beautifully, freshly minted airbrush job. Just want to take your time, be deliberate. Now what we're doing is mixing some of that cold steel. Remember that in-between mix I made earlier? I'm doing a second pass with that kind of mid-tone we created. A little bit thinner, building it up, kind of leaving some behind, giving us some bonus delineation, some bonus drama. Like I told you, if I was going to do a second pass anyway, I was going to make it more dynamic. So we're just laying it down now. So that's where the coverage was important, but opacity wasn't, because I knew I was going to do a second pass anyway, a little brighter, kind of deliberately leaving some of the boiler black behind. But you get a lot of flex with metal. Metal kind of lets you do whatever. So you can be kind of rough. It'll look fine, it'll ride. Now we're going to grab galvanized steel. I learned the hard way once upon a time. This is a metallic paint. It's not just straight up gray. There's glitter in it. Now we're going to take some of this and mix it into our formula. And this will be kind of our brightest. Now, it is my hope that because it's like a less glittery metal, it'll knock it down a little bit, right? And this will give us a fun, brighter finishing point, but it will also degrade some of the glitteriness of the metal. And it's going on real thin and transparent, and it's going to be informed by both the boiler black and the cold steel as we lay it up, because this is pretty transparent. We got plenty of moisture in it, and it's getting a lot of good coverage. It's even got a little cold steel mixed into it, so it's not in its final form. It's totally unique, and I like the way it looks. We get some clean metals, and it's dried for a few minutes, and you see it's looking real good. Now let's grab a flat brush, aka dry brush. We're gonna grab some white, marrow white. God, classic color right there. And we're gonna dry brush some shit here. I'm gonna dry brush the shield. Now, this is part of the plan, guys. Remember I told you I'm gonna pre-highlight it? So I already built up those values, and now I'm just gonna like aggressively dry brush the shit out of it with pure white. And this is gonna help big time for laying down the yellows and the oranges. This is creating the values, creating some bonus edge highlights. It's rough as fuck, don't worry about it. I'm even gonna kind of carve in some bonus crossfade on the sword. Gangster, don't overthink it. Dry brushing, aka fake painting. It looks like a cartoon sped up, like it's ridiculous. So dry brushing is one of those techniques, it's foundation techniques. You definitely learn it, master it. It's got a lot of application. We're just going to now begin the wash technique. Now, we haven't used this in a few minutes. Mr. Weather, aka Mr. Hobby, multi-black, and the solvent. So what I did is I mixed a little solvent and a little multi-black into a pot. These are oil washes, and I'm going to be deploying the next level painting active washing system right now all over this entire model. I'm using the oil paints because it has a more filtery quality, a little bit more of like a realistic kind of filter, provides a little bit more depth, and it has incredible coverage capability. Like it knows how to get where you want it to go fast. But most importantly, it has incredibly long work times because it is an oil paint. So I can get everything done now. I can get it relatively smooth in the first pass, but you can see it's not optimized. That's okay. Active washing system requires us to do a little bit of editing. Now, we have gotten a nice filtering quality with this pure black all over everything, and now we're going to just take that same brush, use a little bit of the solvent, a little paper towel action, and I'm just going to start removing and subtracting it from some of our high point areas where our brighter parts of our transition are poking through. And it's going to start revealing and smoothing it out and blending it. So this is basically oil blending using this wash, which is actually a weathering pigment like compound, but it actually has this incredible washing ability. It's going to add some depth to the model. We're going to be able to preserve some of the peaks. It's going to filter it down to this nice darker version of itself. It's going to find itself into all the panel lines, give us this contrast. Because at the end of the day, guys, a wash's job is to make the dark shit darker. It needs to get in the crevices, the recesses, the shelves, be reasonably opaque and dark. Now, when you go hard like this, it gets onto every part of the model. The solution is this subtraction method, aka next level painting, active washing, and that's what we're doing. And with the oil wash, we have more work time, and that's why I chose it. Ultimately, I use other washes like Army Painter, Quick Shades, and stuff like that. But since this guy's a kind of a robot with a lot of flat panels, that's kind of risky, and I would never have washed it with those paints. But people ask me all the time when to use the Mr. Hobby weathering, when not to. This is a perfect example of when to. So we're just going to take our time, edit. Now, some people do use like little cotton swabs, Q-tips, things like that for this. I find that they're a little rough and they can peel up your paint. I just use the same sable brush I used to dump it. As a matter of fact, you can have a really high quality sable brush that you just devote to this. I find the paintbrush does the best job. Just keep dipping in the formula, keep dipping into the solvent, use it, light brush pressure, little dabbing motions, little, sweepers, whatever you need to do. You're doing a combination of sponging it off, spreading it around, and blending it. And you see, I can even go back yet again and still subtract some of the filter from some of these high points. And we're being left with an incredibly dramatic and dimensional kind of just effect here, like a really fucking just deep blackish blue gray. All right, here we go. Infernal Orange, Amber Orange. These are two amazing colors. I never got a chance to use the Infernal Orange, Cygnus Yellow, and some other yellow, whatever. I got all the yellows and oranges in the game. Throw some water down in the palette, maybe a little flow improver. And what we're going to do is paint that fucking shield and paint that sword. Got my wet palette set up. I'm going to kind of convert to a glaze. My Infernal Orange is kind of a big part of the paint job, but you really want to just start with the yellow. So I have a little dirty orange on the brush and mostly this yellow. We thinned it down by lowering the opacity through water. We're going to remove some of the excess moisture with a paper towel, and we're going to lightly glaze this yellow in over our ghetto-ass pre-highlight, okay? And this is going to help us get to yellow fast. If we just started with orange and tried to build the yellow, it's going to take 1,000 seconds. So you kind of go reverse order. Let's get the yellow to stick to this combination of blue, gray, and white. Lay it down, let it dry, do it a few times, and let's just battle in to our orange. You can see already you're getting a much more vibrant yellow than you would have normally. So just take your time, build it up. It's a thin sheet of glass. It's informed by everything underneath it. And I'm going to paint all this crap too. Like I don't even know what this, what to do with this stuff, but I'm going to paint. I just want to paint yellow. Fuck it. I'm on a yellow kick right now. So we're going to let that set up. The most important thing about these base coats is let it dry out. Same thing on the sword. Just lay it down. Thin. Move it around. Don't let it pull up. You can be lazy with it. You still got to make your adjustments. And let it dry. Do it again. This is about coverage, not opacity. You're going to seek opacity through multiple coats. Okay, time to now start flipping the script. Yellow as fuck. It's time to get the Infernal Orange deployed. We're going to pull it down, thin it down. I might start pulling the other orange into it, maybe even some yellow, because here's the thing. Before I go to its maximum orange, I want it to have more of a relationship with this yellow. That's a little safer. That's going to lower the fail rate, okay? So take your time, be a little closer in value, right? Like I'm looking at the value of the yellow, not necessarily the hue, and I'm finding something a little closer to it. A lot of this is convincing colors to stick to themselves. So by introducing some of those yellows and those medium oranges, suddenly it's like, hey, that's my buddy over here, some yellow. This is fun. Let's stick to this, guys. Instead of the nightmare that is fucking around with yellow. And just keep doing it over and over again, guys, right? Let it dry, do a second pass, let it dry, do a third pass. And once you can kind of get that mid-tone built up to where the yellow is more the highlight, then you can start getting aggressive, okay? And like I said, I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing with this thing. I'm just fucking with it. Didn't have a plan. So we're just going to lay it down, go hard, be an artist, have fun. Start building it up as it dries. Now, by using pure water for this, I'm not using any flow improver, even though I have it on the table. The water helps it dry super fast. So we're just building it up, smoothing it out, keeping it nice and thin and transparent. It's another sheet of glass. You see we're building up that transition pretty fucking fast. And we're going to do the sword real quick. Wow, snapshot. Look at that. Crossfade. Do the bottom, do the front, do the middle of the top piece. So what I'm doing is in real time, just changing which glaze I'm using between the yellow, the medium orange, and the Infernal Orange. So that's called wet glazing. I don't know if it's called that, but that's what I call it. So it's basically just glazing, but not removing a bunch of moisture from the brush and moving back and forth real quick. And as soon as it starts to dry, stop. You're on a timer. And that's all we did right there. And by working with similar colors, managing our values, putting the paint exactly where it needs to go, it's going to be fine. It'll ride. Now we're going to do the middle of the sword on the top with the Infernal Orange. And that's kind of the crossfade I like to do. So you just kind of flip the script. So it's bright on the edges, dark in the middle, flip it on the bottom. And now we're doing the same thing. It's still in glaze mode. We just, lazy glazed it in. Now, hey, this is dry. We're letting the sword dry, go back to the shield, introduce more Infernal Orange, start building it up over time. This is going to be a bit of a labor of love. It's going to take probably 30 fucking coats. I don't know. Just build it up. You're trying to max your opacity out because that's where the saturation is going to come through. Just build it up, take your time, but you can bounce between this and the sword over and over again, so you never have to sit there and wait like a hobo, like a savage. Now we're going to go back to the yellow. I'm going pretty out of the pot here with just a little bit of water. Yellow's like that, and it's a little thin, but I'm really just painting a line in here, and you're going to see it kind of just blend right into what we're doing just fine. It's not going to be a problem. Just keep the paint smooth, thin it out, light brush pressure, build it up, because now we need to generate a little bit more opacity on the yellow side of things, right? Yellow can be tricky like that. So I'm just going to build it back into the orange. Then I'll fight the orange back into the yellow. It's all good. I'm going to start playing with the idea of what I'm going to do with those little fucking hex patterns. Start messing with this crap again. Like I said, I still don't fucking know what's going on. Just throwing it down, having a good old time. Now we're going to send back some of our medium orange colors. Just kind of just kind of battling into the shadow, out of the shadow, back to the mid-tone. It's important to be able to do that, right? Where you see the highlight and the shadow collide in that mid-tone. Sometimes you just got to fuck with the mid-tone and not fuck with the shadow or the highlight. Sometimes you just fuck with the highlight. But if you're working thin like this, you can go back and forth endlessly, guys. Now, I did just recently do a video on this, on something really small and tight, and now we're doing it on something huge. So, like I said, if you're using water, it'll dry pretty quick, but always let it fucking dry. Build up the opacity. Now I'm starting to kind of figure out what I want to do with all these doodads. I'm going to make them kind of slick and shiny like they're gold. I don't know if this thing's glowing. I don't know. I think in my mind it's not supposed to be yellow, but I'm just having too much fun with the yellow and orange to not paint it yellow and orange. I'm going to paint it all yellow and orange, and then later I might change some of the circuitry to another color. All right, marrow white. It's time to brighten up our yellow. So we're going to brighten the yellow up. It's going to desaturate. That's fine. You just all you care about is the value right now. You want it to be brighter because as you saw through the glazing methodology, we can always resaturate this later. All you give a shit about is making it brighter. So we made it a little brighter, and we're going to just start carving it in, keeping it thin. It's a sheet of glass. It's a slightly more opaque glaze than we've been doing, but that's fine. Just stay in control. Build up these values. That's all you give a shit about right now. White's going to be helpful. Don't hesitate to grab it if you need it. Now we're going to just grab some fucking raw dog marrow white. Carve it in. Get it looking pow. Love it. Popping. Back and forth. Feel like we got to play with that sword again here in a second. Oh, look, I did. Now we're going to just do the same thing. Pop it out. Pop these doodads out. His little fucking back fins at his back. Lower fin. I don't know. I was going to say back dick. I don't know if that rides. I don't know if that translates. Okay, here we go. Fucking with it. Let's run back into our yellow. Let's start glazing the yellow in. Go back and forth again. I think, obviously, I think I hit it 2 or 3 times between this cutscene. Just so you didn't have to watch it the entire fucking time. But you can see, battle it back and forth deliberately. Now look, in a perfect world, you could have just done with your airbrush. I've airbrushed 1,000 things yellow on this channel, so let's do it with the paintbrush. Now, we're definitely a little orangey, a little bit more mustardy on that shield. We got to build up our yellows again. The sword is looking a lot more fire. It's bringing the heat. Back fin, back dick, all that shit's bringing the heat. Shield's getting a little mustardy. It's huge. So what I'm going to do is take a little break here. I'm just going to relax. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to do something totally low pressure. I'm going to just grab my detail brush and start carving some little edge highlights on these little fucking thingies. Just need to reset. Just need to relax. That's totally low stress, right? I'm going to drag a couple of horizontal slashes diagonally down. Same mix on the sword. Trying to get cute. Little gleaming effect. No big deal. I don't really like it. Doesn't look that good. But hey, I'll glaze it out and it'll be fuzzy and awesome. Okay, let all that shit dry. It's feeling good. What we're going to do now is take a moment to edge highlight the shit out of this guy. Okay? So what we did was we grabbed the last kind of gray blue that we ended on. That's kind of my rule of thumb. When you do your airbrushes, your final airbrushing highlight, typically you can just kind of reach into that for your first edge highlight. So I've got a couple of piles set up on the wet palette that are indeed that mix. A little bit of white next to it, so in case I need to make it a little brighter on the fly. What we're doing is we're rotating the model, looking for the flat edges so we can just scrape our brush along the flat edge. This is the scraper right here. Hold your breath, swing it from right to left. Now, anytime you can get a nice horizontal slash, rotate the model and go for it. That's the easiest thing in the world. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you have to just draw a fucking line. When you got to draw a line, just hold your breath, drag a tight little line down to your heart using the tip of your brush. But there's almost always a way to get these crisp lines, tracing these edges. Always look for the easy way out if you can. Find that shortcut. Now, I'm not going to edge highlight everything, but I'm going to edge highlight a lot of it because part of this dark color scheme
does kind of rely on the edge highlight. Like if you don't edge highlight it appropriately, then the darkness of his armor panels really won't translate, in my opinion. So you should just take that extra moment, and we're going to just hit everything, okay? And earlier when I mentioned saving real estate, like when we were airbrushing our highlights up, you also want to be cognizant of that when you're doing your edge highlights. So I periodically will be reaching in for a little bit more white to devote to smaller bits of real estate, somewhat randomly, but usually towards something a little sharper, maybe a 90-degree cut as we layer up our highlight game. You know, we're using some of that Gravedigger denim, some of that Thalmar black, some of that weird smoky purple gray, and a little bit of white. So you don't want to just always retrace it all and just highlight it over and over again. No, you want to leave real estate behind and pop a little white center mass here, little edge there. It's all, you know, sometimes I just do it randomly when there's nothing really sharp to kind of hit. Sometimes I just go center mass. But the other day, just tracing shit. There he is, looking beautiful. Just taking your time. Now we're going to do the same thing on his knee pads. We grab the galvanized steel and the cold steel, mix them together again, and we just kind of highlight it where we left off. You see, we're getting a nice clean metallic highlight. We're rotating the model. We're doing tracers where we can, heart pulls otherwise. Don't be lazy. Try to find the route to create that crisp line if possible, but also know that when you're doing metal, it's a little more forgiving, so you don't have to be crazy. I'm going to do a little heart pull right here, just drag it straight down using the tip of my brush. Love it. Beautiful. Now, that was a lot of tracing. Crazy. Do some of the tracing in his little back fin. We got a little metal piece there. We're going to do a center line heart pull. I want it to be deliberately sharp and center. Pow. Crisp. Love it. Now, I did film this video over the course of 3 weeks. I was taking my time, really channeling the passion on this model. I didn't want to do it in one big shot. I wanted to stay active. And because of that, you're getting this bonus section right here where I'm doing some scratches. So this is an effect. This effect uses one technique. The technique is known as edge highlighting. So what I did was I drew 3 lines with black, heart pulls, tip of my brush, drag it straight to my heart, and then underneath the line, I'm doing a highlight. Simple as that. We're using the same galvanized steel highlight. You use raw dog black. And because of that, you got a nice 3-dimensional effect. Okay, moving on. We're gonna do the base. I said I was gonna do this whole fucking model. So we're using some Vallejo Dark Earth pumice. It's water soluble. Even when it's old and crusty, just grab a little bit of water, make it into a little slurry like concrete. And then we'll just lay it on the base, move it around. You can get it up on its feet. It don't matter. It's dirt. He stepped in some dirt. It's all good. Just shove it around. Get the texture you want. Use a little water to smooth it out. I grabbed a little Elric's Hobbies base rubble add-ons, some rocks, threw them in there. Now while that's drying, I realized I want to make this little doodads more yellow. So what I'm doing is the same thing we did on the shield and the sword. I'm going to paint the inner fields of these little spots white. That's our pre-highlight. And then we're going to add yellow. Now, it appears at some point during this cutscene, I finally decided on the shield. So next time I rotate the model, take a look at that. Looks like I've carved in some extra shit there. So we're using our glaze technique over that white, and we're doing it exactly like we did on the shields. Sometimes you just want to go in there and paint it white first, so you don't have to fucking paint 1,000 little coats of yellow in a tiny little pocket over straight black. So once it dries, do it again. You want to get some more opacity. You want to get that yellow to pop, just like we did on the shield. And then what we'll do is we'll carve some infernal orange in around it and make them look like maybe they're little glowy lights. I don't fucking know. I'm not a light scientist. All I know is that I don't like painting yellow over black, so we just switched it over to white first. Here we go. Infernal orange, watered down. We're just going to kind of ring it, give it a little rim job. There it is. Pow, just blends right in. Look at that. Do them all. And you can even let a little bit of it spill out. You can just kind of dab some in on the metal all around it, maybe give it a subtle glow. But still, it's just glazing, guys. Even if you can call this an effect, if this is a glowing OSL effect, if you can call it that loosely, it still relies on the glazing techniques. There it is. Man, that does look a lot better. I'm glad I made that decision. I must have slept on it. Can't remember exactly what I was doing. Now, always go back in there and deploy an edge highlight. We just threw a little bit more of that yellow and that white in there. And you can see we glazed a little bit more yellow into the shields. Now what we're going to do is grab some wash. Some P3 wash. Man, fuck, I haven't even ever used one of these. This is like some brown wash. I don't know what the name is, but it's brown. And what we're going to do is just wash the shit out of this dark earth. And that's what's cool about this pumice is that it's already kind of brown. And all you got to do is deploy a wash. It'll find its way into the recesses. And it will give it a little bit of definition. Remember, washes are supposed to make the dark stuff darker. So, hey, bonus effect. All the little spots in between the grains and the dirt, darker. It's like basically washing 1,000 little nuts. Beautiful. And also, that's a nice brown. So we really did brownify this dirt. I like that. Really organic and realistic. It's a little one-dimensional now, but we'll have to do something about that later. Look, I already had some gray in my wet palette. The exact gray of our model, which, you know, honestly, don't fucking do this because there's not going to be any fucking contrast here if it's the same gray as the model. So what that means is you got to shift them. So what I did was I grabbed Sickly Skin. God, you remember Sickly Skin, guys? I haven't used that in a while either. I just mixed Sickly Skin into the mix, and we're going to start highlighting it off. Basically, it's an ivory or an eggshell white. And while the rocks are still wet, I'm just going to just swirl some of this Sickly Skin in there. No rhyme, no fucking reason. I don't give a shit. It's going to be all messy. It's all good, the rocks. Pow, pow. Look at that. Power through. Just let it get streaky. It's fine. Big ass rock back here. And these aren't even primed, guys. These are straight resin. Like, I didn't prime them. I just started painting them. So it's getting a little streaky. It's all good. I'm going to let that streakiness ride. All good. There's our Sickly Skin. Fucking love it. Now that it's dry, I'm going to grab a puffy little shit brush and I'm going to convert it into a dry brush. And we're just going to dry brush some raw Sickly Skin on these rocks. Make them a little dustier. Get those edges. Make them a little bit more realistic. And damn, those rocks came out suddenly pretty good. I'm feeling it. But we need to do something about the brown. The brown is a little one-dimensional right now. So we're going to have to break that up too. Since I still have Sickly Skin on my brush, I'm just going to grab some Bogren Brown. You guys remember Bogren Brown? God, that was one of my favorite colors. P3 paints. I love you. I'm going to just dry brush some of this brightened, sickly skinned Bogren Brown into it. It's going to get on its foot. It's going to get on the rocks. That's fine. Dirt does that. Dirt gets on things. It gets things dirty. I'm not a dirt scientist. So we're just going to lay it down, build up some dimension, make it pop, let it do its best. Basing 101. Pretty fucking easy shit. Get yourself some pumice, some rocks, learn how to dry brush. All good. Now what we're going to do is throw some gamer's grass on. Pow. I chose the, the kind of straw colored tan grass. Feel like that might work. I was thinking about green, but, I almost never use it. I like this. Now, here's another thing. I like to tie the tufts of grass into the dirt. So just grab some wash if you want, the same wash you use, and you can do that in your own time. But here it is, guys. Our firebrand is looking sexy. Had a blast painting this. Shout out to P3 Paints and Privateer Press. Play on, players.